A little over a year ago, I attended a 2-day tactical handgun class at Front Sight. And at that time, I filmed a video covering all the gear that I used for that class. And I promised that I would shortly afterward present a recap of the class. Obviously, I did not bring that to you right afterward, but here we are finally to present the top 10 advanced handgun skills taught at Front Sight. Now, before we move on, I want to mention that one of the reasons I didn't present this information sooner is that I learned that Front Sight has kind of broken their classes up a little bit differently since the time that I took this class. What that means is the class I'm recapping for you right now doesn't exist in its exact same form anymore. However, the skills that I'm telling you about are still being taught there. And so whether you learn this stuff in the exact same class that I took or in one that's slightly different, it's useful to know that this is all stuff that is presented at Front Sight. Also, let me emphasize that this video should not be considered training in and of itself. If you want proper instruction, please go out and get it. Don't let a video like this be a substitute. And lastly, because people are going to bring it up in the comments section, let me mention that the skills I'm talking about are advanced from the perspective of Front Sight. There are plenty of other places that teach these types of skills as a more remedial entry-level type of a thing. So don't by any means suppose that these are the advanced skills to know. You came here knowing this was a Front Sight recap video. I assume you want to know what's taught at Front Sight. With that out of the way, let's get into this top 10 list. So number 1, the Sewell ready position and 360-degree scan. What is Sewell? Well, it's a ready position that puts the handgun tight against the body. And this is something that we learned as sort of an advanced method above the standard ready position, which is, kind of putting your gun away from your body at a 45-degree angle. The advantage of Sewell, primarily in the case of this class, is that you can turn 360 degrees around and have the gun pointed in a safe direction, that direction being the ground. We learned this skill right away in this class, and it was something that we implemented throughout the remainder of the time that we were there. Once again, Sewell enables those 360-degree scans, and that is also something that we continue to do throughout the class. I like the Sewell ready position. I definitely like it better than the standard one that we had previously been taught. It's just a lot cleaner, a lot tighter as far as the package you present and the way you present your body. And I really like that about it. So the fact that you can scan in 360 degrees is also super important because in any defensive encounter, you want to not only look in the direction of where your bad guy may have been, but all around you to see if you're perhaps surrounded by other bad guys, right? So being able to turn safely in 360 degrees is super important. And again, a lot of things that I like about it, but that's probably the main thing. Number 2, kneeling and prone shooting positions. I gotta say, I kind of have mixed feelings about the usefulness of these shooting positions, but it's also good stuff to know. So we learn these positions as a means of shooting accurately at longer distances. However, for me, bringing the gun that much closer to my face, which is what happens as you're kneeling, it changed the focal position of the sights. And that just completely threw me off. So I did not find that I was more accurate shooting from a kneeling position than I was from a standing position. It's possible that with more practice, I would be far more accurate shooting from a prone position. So of the two, I think learning to shoot pistol from prone was probably more interesting and more valuable. And yeah, I do feel like that could potentially create better accuracy because you actually have a better platform. You are getting lower to the ground and your sights are still at the same focal distance as they would be when your arms are fully extended. So again, to me, I can see a lot of potential advantage in shooting pistol from prone. I think I need a lot more practice with it to determine if it's something really worth doing though. Having said all that, I think it's really good to know some kneeling and prone positions as a great way to sort of get some cover and lower your position and your profile to any threat. Number 3, the close contact palm strike and step back. In this class, we shot at closer distances than ever before, and we learned about creating distance from those close threats. This is important because in many cases, a threat may present itself to you in a very close proximity. Perhaps you're in a crowd, perhaps there's no way to recognize this situation as a threat until it's far, far too close. In any case, knowing how to deal with the threat that is literally an arm's reach from you, I think is super important. This was also my first training experience mixing open hand defense with firearms. And in my opinion, it's critical to have some capabilities with each of those. So the idea with the close contact palm strike step back is that in this close contact scenario, you want to be able to create distance between you and your threat. And a physical strike to your threat can be enough to create that distance, or at least a small amount of that distance. This is definitely something that I want to spend a lot more time practicing, as it is probably one of the more critical skills that you should have as somebody who concealed carries a firearm. Number 4 kind of previews some of the stuff that we are going to talk about later, as this class had a lot to do with low light shooting. So the low light chamber check and mag check, or checking this stuff in the dark. When you're in the dark, visibility is really low. You are left to your other senses. And what other senses are you going to use to check the status of your gun, the physical capability of your gun? Well, you got to use your fingers. So the low light chamber check, mag check helped us to identify, the most efficient way of checking the chamber, checking the magazine, double checking that you don't have some sort of malfunction, making sure that everything's working properly on your gun, and doing it all by feel. So that was pretty cool. It's one of those things that just makes total sense, but I never would have really considered it without it having been presented to me in this sort of scenario, in a class like this. So really enjoyed that part of the class. Number 5, the Harries technique for handheld flashlights, and this continues the low light portion of the class that I talked about earlier. Interestingly, I discovered that I might actually like the idea of using a handheld light better than the idea of using a weapon-mounted one. That's not to say that weapon-mounted lights don't have a place. I think they do. I think they are quite valuable, quite useful. But I can see that it's safer in a lot of ways to be able to have one hand facing one direction with the light while the gun is in the other hand and can be pointed in a safe direction, perhaps in that Sewell position or something like that, and then come to the ready or, to that firing position when you identify a threat. So again, I think that there are some big advantages to that. You're not covering a potential victim or potential, friendly with your firearm just so that you can identify them with the light that happens to be mounted to your firearm. I think you get what I'm trying to say with that. Number 6, room clearing in low light. This is pretty eye-opening and pretty interesting. So the instructors made it really firmly clear to us that in low light, you should use your natural night vision as much as possible and only use your flashlight when you actually have to. This is something that they reinforced throughout the class. They asked us to walk around in the dark, pitch black. Again, this is the desert of Nevada, so it's very dark. They asked us to walk around without using our flashlights unless we absolutely had to, which was cool. And I haven't done that very often, so it's pretty interesting to see my eyes adjust and get used to walking around in very, very dark, but being able to see enough detail to move around and identify certain things. Pretty cool. And again, with that reasoning, they say that momentary on is an important feature either for your weapon-mounted or handheld flashlight and should be used when clearing rooms just to illuminate real quickly and then turn right back off again. One of the other reasons is that using that light marks your position and makes you a target. And so they emphasized that if you're going to use your light to illuminate an area, after you turn that light back off, you move to the side, get off of the line that you just created for yourself by turning that light on. They also emphasize that you don't want to blow out your night vision, so choose a light that allows your eyes to easily readjust after using it. That's a pretty strong and important point as well. So that's one of the reasons I feel like between 2 and 400 lumens is about the right amount. Now, this is probably subjective and depends on the person using the light, but for me, I can turn on a 2 to 400 lumen light in absolute darkness, be able to see for a second, then turn it back off, and my eyes adjust relatively quickly to the dark. But if it was 900, 1,000 plus lumens, that's really just blowing out my night vision, it takes me longer to readjust to the dark. So having something that's a little bit lower powered, to me, makes a bit more sense. Number 7, one-handed shooting and malfunction clearance. Probably the most challenging and also the most fun aspect of this class was learning to shoot and clear malfunctions one-handed, both strong and support side. To me, this is a really highly practical skill for scenarios where you have to fight through an injury or fight with one hand while protecting a loved one or protecting something else of, serious value to you. They taught us different stances as well as ways to deal with dynamic circumstances. For example, my gun, because I had a Glock 17 with a PL2 light on it from Olight, and the holster was designed to work well with that gun and that light. However, one of the things they taught us as a way to sort of stash your gun while you're dealing with a malfunction, put it in the holster backwards, just enough. It'll go in there, again, without a light on it, it'll go in there just enough that you can get it out of your hand and eject the magazine or deal with some other malfunction with that same hand while reaching around your belt and so forth. But not if you've got a light on it that makes it impossible to feed into the holster. And that was my case. So I had to deal with that sort of dynamic circumstance on the fly during the middle of the drill. And I didn't really know what I was going to do until I figured, look, I can squeeze this gun between my knees, kind of squat down a little bit. Then I can eject the magazine. Then I can fish over to my belt and I can get the magazine into the mag well, pull the gun out, slap it on my knee to seat that mag, and then rack it on my holster or belt or whatever. And I did all that one-handed. So again, it's super dynamic. They help you work through all those little things that you may not have anticipated or prepared for or had any clue of how to do. And in the end, it was so fun. Learning those skills was really, really fun. Number 8, the alternate Type 3 clearance technique, which is the wrist to knee technique. Now, this method has been taught at other schools, and Front Sight now recommends it as an alternate to the lock strip method. The way that they've taught the Type 3 before has been you'll lock the slide back, you strip the magazine out, you rack, and then you reinsert the magazine and rack again, and that's how you clear the Type 3 malfunction. But this one is far quicker, simpler, probably doesn't work on every gun all the time, but for the Glock 17 I was using, it worked like a charm. And all it is you take that, again, you've got that Type 3 that you're experiencing, and all you do is basically slap your wrist while you're still holding the gun. You smack your wrist to your knee. You got to make sure that you're positioned in a way that you're still pointed down range, obviously. But you smack your wrist to your knee with the gun still firmly in your hand. That magazine just drops to the ground. At that point, you can rack, and insert the new magazine. So the lock strip portion of that is done. And you've basically gotten yourself halfway through the drill, which is pretty cool. That said, it's still important to know the lock strip method as well, because you may be in a position, your body, wherever you are, where slapping your wrist to your knee just won't work. Again, I'm not going to try to imagine different scenarios or whatever, but I think you can imagine some of those. It doesn't always work for your body position. So understanding and knowing multiple ways to deal with the Type 3 is super important. It's just kind of a bonus to learn this new one. Number 9, responding to threats from the side and the rear. This is also really important because your threats don't just come from head on. It's important to understand how to move your body to counter a threat, regardless of the direction that threat is coming from. So they helped us learn how to, turn to the right, turn to the left, which sounds like somebody's got to teach you how to turn your body to the right or to the left. But when you're doing this and drawing at the same time, you do have to go through it slowly. Think about every muscle movement, every step, and make it as slow and as efficient as it can be so that you can do it efficiently and quickly later on when you speed it up. So once again, it's important to walk through this stuff step by step, movement by movement, to turn from 90 degrees and turn from 180 degrees and identify and put your shots on that target. So this was really fun, getting to do a little bit more movement, responding to threats from the rear and the side. Very cool. And finally, number 10, shooting while moving. And that's moving forward, moving backward, and perpendicular to the target. We practiced all those things, and it was really fun, and I wanted to do a lot more of it, and I want to practice a lot more of this kind of stuff. This is, I think, useful skills for competition shooters, and probably stuff that they learn on the fly as they are doing their competitions and so forth. I've never done competition shooting, so can't really speak to it authoritatively. But I can see that this is something really useful and meaningful there. But not only that, it's also critical for defensive situations. You need to get out of the line of the attack. It's about as important as stopping the attack. So learning how to shoot while you're moving is pretty critical. And again, you've got to learn how to shoot while moving forward, how to shoot while moving back, not the same thing, how to shoot while moving side to side, not the same as either of the other two. So learning each one individually and learning some of the steps and learning some of the ways that all that happens efficiently is critical. You got to walk through it slowly before you can move through it quickly. So it was a lot of fun going through all of that. Definitely want to practice that a lot more. One of the reasons is I found myself, as soon as the threat was identified, I found myself wanting to stop, freeze in place, and return fire. That's what my body was used to doing. So learning to move as you're shooting is pretty critical. And trust me when I say this, it's not something you can just say, oh, I'll just do it. No, you've got to actually practice it, because like I did, you're probably going to lock up, hold yourself in one place, be as stable as you can, and shoot from that one standing position. So I clearly need to practice this, and if you also agree that moving off the line of attack and returning fire at the same time is important, you're gonna have to practice it. So those are the 10 advanced handgun skills that I learned at Front Sight in my 2-day tactical handgun course. I know they have courses that are more advanced than this, and to some of you guys listening, this stuff sounds remedial. That's totally fine with me. But as far as Front Sight is concerned, this is definitely the sort of step up from what they teach in their 4-day standard handgun class. And so definitely try to, if you attend Front Sight, try to move up to that advanced class, because these are really, really meaningful and useful skills that honestly, I think they could, sort of expand their main 4-day course into a 6-day course and bring all this stuff in there at the end. Probably would be too much for most people to attend and actually do, but that's how critical and how fundamental I think some of this stuff is. Being able to move while shooting in low light. This is all stuff that really happens that you really end up having to deal with. So I feel like it's all stuff that I want to practice a whole lot more, and it's all stuff that's worth learning for sure. Well, guys, thanks for watching. I hope the video was worth the wait, and I hope this information was useful to you. I'm Late Boy Scout. Y'all take care.